Welcome, everybody, to the latest Motoring Millennials podcast episode. I'm Zach Rothenberger with Anthony Lucci, as always. A special Friday episode the week after Memorial Day. We hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend and always remember why we celebrate that holiday. So a lot of people gave some and some gave all for this country. So, we really appreciate our veterans and those who served. And before we get into this week's episode, we want to recap some of our recent episodes, which we talked about auto detailing. We're going to start doing some more auto detailing episodes. And last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about the art of washing your car and the proper ways to do it and some best practices that we recommend. We also had Rob Keister on from the Mid-Atlantic .90 Association recently. Be sure to tune into that to hear about that great series and great events he has going on this year. And speaking of events, we have the J Brothers Promotions No Box 660 Shootout coming up June 10th to the 12th at Maple Grove Raceway. We're the third round sponsor of that race. The J Brothers, Jake, Joe, and Jed. We had an episode with them as well to talk about that race. Great people. It'll be a great event. So be sure to, if you're in the Northeast, be sure to be there for that race. You have a $5,000 to win Friday, $10,000 Saturday, and $5,000 on Sunday. So it'll be a great time. And the weather so far is looking good. But now that brings us to this episode. Anthony, you've been neck deep in a serious project going on at your house. You're building a big garage. That's right.
Yeah, Zach. It's been I guess like really 2-year project that has finally come to fruition. And I guess we figured we would do an episode on how to build a new garage and all of the things that go into that, because let's face it, you never have enough space, right? And especially anyone who's listening to this podcast who has, whether it's one car, a bunch of cars, motorcycles, anything that you don't want to leave out in the weather, you need to have a place to store that, right? And that's, I think a lot of us know when you're either shopping for a house or you're going to be shopping for a house down the road, a garage is very important, right? It's not technically considered living space, but it is definitely an important part of the purchase process. And the house that I moved into had a single car garage. Unfortunately, it was just located too close to the house, and I thought I was going to be able to snake a driveway around it and put a garage behind it, and that ended up not being feasible. So I had to demo that entire garage and then go through the whole process of building this new one. And it has been let's just say I've learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, and I can't wait to dive into the specifics and the whole process that you've gone through these last 2 years and you're still going through now. And I think, like you said, every car girl, car guy, we all, like, the garage is our happy place. So it definitely weighs on us heavily when it comes to purchasing a house or, learning what it takes to build that garage, whether it's your dream garage or just a big garage to house all your toys and spend a lot of your time. So paint us a little bit of a picture, Anthony, like what size is the garage that you put up, and kind of, paint us a picture of what it looks like and kind of the purpose of your garage.
Yeah, definitely. So originally I wanted to go with a 1,200 square foot garage, which would have been a 30 by 40. Unfortunately, the township that I live within would not allow me to build something that big. And it's the reason behind that was there were no garages on the same side of my street within 250 feet that matched those dimensions. And we're going to kind of get into some of these, the permits and the restrictions that you may be placed on your property depending on where you live. But so I couldn't do the 30 by 40. So the long story short, the largest garage that they would let me put up was 768 square feet, which is 32 feet long by 24 feet deep. So essentially it's a 3-car garage It's kind of a tight 3-car garage, but we're going to make it work. So, so it has 3 doors. One's a 10 by 10, one is a 9 by 10, and the third one is a 9 by 10 as well. And the garage has 12-foot high walls. I mean, technically the ceiling is 12 feet tall, but since it's really just all open space up there, the peak is a little above 16 feet. So there's plenty of space, a lot of space. But like I said earlier, I guess we all know you never really have enough space.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost echoing in there when we were cracking beers in it this past weekend. So there's definitely a lot of room for activities, that's for sure. And you mentioned how high the ceilings are, so you could put a lift or two in there to fit even more cars, or if you needed to work underneath, and just for the convenience and luxury of having one of those. So now you mentioned how the borough, the township, they were kind of strict with what you had to do, and you mentioned permits. That's something that I think a lot of people don't realize. Like, I think a lot of people, I'm going to build a garage. It's my property, my land. I can do whatever I want. Yeah. Well, in some states, maybe, but like in Pennsylvania, that's not typically the case. So can you walk us through some of the red tape, the administrative work, and like the whole permit process that you had to go through?
Yeah, Zach, I mean, you said it perfectly. About some states you can, maybe even dependent on your local municipality, it varies. So, I would say, you really, before you even move to a place, if you're planning to do this, make sure you do your research, read the code, and even call up the township and ask questions. I think there's only so much planning you can do, but the better informed that you can be, the happier I think you're going to be in the long run. I had to jump through a bunch of hoops. I mean, and this is kind of the boring part of the whole garage build, right? But it's important, because if you don't get this done, you can be fined, and we don't want that. So I had to get the whole property surveyed. I had to get a grading plan completed. And I was a couple square feet under having to do a full stormwater management plan as well. So there is, and all of those things cost a lot of money. And my personal feeling about it is it's a lot of money where you're not really getting anything out of it. I mean, the original drawing that I sketched up was really no better than the grading plan and the property survey that I had done. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit more professional looking, but all the language that's on the property survey and the grading plan, honestly, when they even came out to inspect the building, they didn't even look at any of that. So it's one of those things. It's almost like Monopoly, like you pay your $200 and you get to go pass go, right? Or I guess in Monopoly, it's a little better. You collect your $200, but in this case, you have to pay it to the bank. So, so all that stuff that you have to do. And it's just one of those things that I think the biggest thing is you have to learn to be patient, because I know I had to follow up every single step of the way, whether that was with the person doing the property survey, for the person doing the grading plan, the township. Why has 2 weeks passed by and I haven't heard a single thing? Like, where are my permits? I paid all my money. I don't have permits yet. So that's definitely the most frustrating part. Now, hopefully, for those listening to this episode, hopefully you don't have to deal with that. You might just be able to put a building right up and let us know where you live, because we want to move there. But yeah, if you do have to go through that, that is kind of a lot of the red tape, like you were saying, exactly, you have to cut through.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and you have to be very proactive, it seems like. And you have, like you said, do your research so you're not getting kind of the runaround, you're not getting taken advantage of or just pushed to the side. It's almost like you're basically a project manager, essentially. Yes. It almost seems like, you got to keep tabs on everybody to make sure that it's moving at the pace you need it to. I got to ask kind of a side question. How fun was it drawing up your diagram of like your garage and like your property? This is your first home, right? So it's like, how cool was that I feel like as a kid, like you might draw something like that, and be like, oh, like you're dreaming about it, but now you're actually doing it. So how cool was that?
Yeah, no, that was part of the fun part. I mean, that's what's exciting, right? It's like, okay, I'm gonna have a place to put all my things now, and essentially be able to work on them, right? I mean, that's it's
Mhm.
not, you just don't want it as a storage facility. But I think, actually that was, I think, one thing that I'm happy I did in the very beginning was kind of plan out what is the purpose of the garage. So like you said, Zach, I knew I was going to go with 12-foot high ceilings so I could put a lift in, and I wouldn't have a problem, with the top vehicle hitting the ceiling.
Mhm.
These are all things that you have to think about and pre-plan. If you have, let's just say really high-end cars and you don't work on them and you just want it to look like a showroom, that's a totally different kind of purpose than a garage that you're going to be pulling motors out of cars and you're going to be dropping rear ends out of and putting exhaust systems on and doing brakes and changing oil. That's a totally different garage. So that
Mhm.
affects a lot of different things. Like, flex, what kind of floor coating you're going to put on. You can put one of those really cool, fancy floor designs if you're going to really just use it as like a showroom garage, and you're not really wrenching in it.
Mhm.
But if you're going to be driving cars in and out of it a lot and spilling oil on the floor, and you probably don't really want to do that. You don't want to spend that kind of money on something like that. You probably want to put it into other places. Like, you probably want to budget for a lift, a good workbench, cabinets. And then you also need to think, about where everything's going to go in the garage, right? So like you were saying, Zach, laying that out, like I actually measured every single one of my cars, like with a tape measure, found, obviously find the square footage or the area of each car, and then put them inside the building. And so that way I would know how much room I would have between each vehicle, where the workbench is going to go, what are the dimensions of that, where's my tractor going to go.
Mhm.
And it's ultimately you have to figure out how you're going to maximize that space. And if you could have a garage that held 10 cars, you would still find a way to fill it up. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think just planning all that out, and you don't have, you really don't need any fancy tools to do that. I mean, I'm sure there's free apps that do it, and I think I used a few, but honestly, the easiest way to do it is on with a pen, or a pencil, a piece of paper, a ruler, a protractor, and just kind of lay it out and be able to erase your lines and rearrange things to figure out how it's going to all lay out in the end of the day.
Yeah, and now seeing it come to fruition and actually physically it's in your backyard now, it's got to be very rewarding, and the light is definitely getting at the tunnel. So I'm really excited to see what's next. You you kind of hit on it a little bit, I believe, talking, and everyone knows our current economy, all the issues with whether it's supply chain, the cost of certain materials, gas prices, all that fun stuff. Did you incur or did you feel any of that? Like, did that affect you with getting, whether it was getting your materials you needed, or the pricing in 2022? Was there a lot of economical factors that kind of hindered the process?
Yeah, so I was able to lock the price of my building in back in, it was March of 2021. And thankfully, I got to say, the company held their word to that. I did not pay any additional increase. Now, I can't say that's going to be the case for everyone else. I actually feel kind of lucky and fortunate that is the case. Now the concrete we did have to pay a little bit extra for, because the one contractor, I don't know what happened, but he just ended up ghosting us,
Hmm.
and I don't know if he just didn't want to do the job. But so did have to find another contractor, but I don't feel that we really paid a premium versus like if I started getting quotes today. But I will say, I mean, it's like anything. The longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to cost. But there are definitely, I mean, so I guess one thing to note is what I built is a metal garage that is essentially just bolted to the concrete foundation and floor. Um, and talking about the economy, right, Zach? It's, I would have loved to build a stick frame or post frame garage with lumber, because I just think that's a little bit more of a sound building. You can insulate it a little bit better. You don't have the condensation problems you have with metal buildings. But right now, the metal buildings seem to be a lot cheaper than like a post frame or a stick frame building. So yeah, there are definitely factors out there in the marketplace right now that are going to affect your garage build for sure.
So you mentioned like the use of some contractors. So it seems like you obviously did a lot of project managing yourself and doing a bunch of other work, on top of your day-to-day 9 to 5. So were you kind of the contractor of this whole deal, or was there a general contractor you used that helped outsource certain companies, whether it's for your foundation, the building, et cetera?
Yeah, great question. So I would say if you can afford to hire a general contractor and you can have one company to do everything, or to contract out the concrete and to handle your permit process and to handle the building process and your garage doors, that is 100% the way to go. 100%. As long as it's a good, really good company with a great reputation that is going to be handling all that for you. But of course, like anything, that's going to have a higher cost. So yeah, for this garage, I was essentially the general contractor. And I got to say, it is not easy. It is really not easy. I mean, the amount, like I literally have a notebook full of different contractors that I called, ones that didn't call me back, when some did call me back, what they quoted me. And you literally have to really be detail oriented and organized to keep on top of all these things, along with planning all this stuff out, like knowing like when all this is going to happen. Like, okay, when do I have to have the small garage demolished by, in order for the concrete guys to get started on the excavation, and then the concrete to be poured, and then the building to be installed, after enough length of time for the concrete to cure. So you definitely need to know all this stuff ahead of time. But it's hard. You're making calls during work, when, like you said, these guys work during the day too, just like we do with our 9 to 5 job. So it's hard. You're working full time, but you're also calling contractors and then answering phone calls, answering emails. It is definitely not easy. And I think the one thing to keep in mind is the lowest quote that you get from a contractor might not always be the best quote, right? So like we're always chasing, like, and I do recommend getting as many quotes as possible, because I literally got one quote that for just the concrete that was 3 times the cost of the entire project. So like, I don't know if it's just because they didn't want to do the project, and that's probably the case, but they could just like say, hey, look, this is too small of a project for us. So you definitely have to get, I would say, for the concrete alone, I got 20 different quotes. And then, you literally figure out from there, okay, well, who was the most responsive? Who answered my phone calls? Who answered my emails? Who listened to me? Here's what I want to do. Not saying, oh, well, we don't really recommend that. And, you want to take some recommendations from the contractors, right? Because they live that every day. But you also want to make sure that they aren't cutting corners, and then you need to do your own research. You need to figure out, hey, this is the right way to build a concrete foundation and to how to build a correct slab that's not going to crack as soon as it dries. And a lot of contractors, like, they just want to come in, do the job, and get out. So you got to make sure that you're there, if you are the general contractor, when they're doing the work, and not to really micromanage them, but just to make sure that you are getting what you paid for at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's extremely valuable information that, again, do your research, and the lowest quote might not always be the best quote. And it goes to the old saying of you get what you pay for too, I think. And I can imagine it's literally a second job. It's literally a second job. Not only are you researching stuff to make sure you know what you're talking about and you know what's going into your investment of that garage, but you're also managing relationships with these other contractors and companies and trying to, figure out who you're going to choose and which direction you're going to go. So it's a glorious, it's a beautiful end result, but the process is definitely, it's a grueling process, I would say, from what I'm hearing.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So structurally, what's some advice you would give in choosing certain things structurally, whether it's the floor, buildings, insulation, etc., or just in general, good things to know for someone looking to build a garage?
Yeah, I guess let's start from the bottom up. So the concrete is very important, and I think a lot of people overlook it. I guess even before that, like when you're doing your planning, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, like make sure where you locate your garage is easy. You can easily access it, right? Like, what kind of cars are you bringing in? What kind of trucks are you bringing in? Are you backing a trailer into the garage? All these things you need to think about and say, like, are there trees in the way? Are there, whatever. So, but as far as the concrete itself is concerned, I had to put 3-foot deep footers, which go, below the frost line here in Pennsylvania. Now, again, some counties or states, they might not require that, but that's an important thing to know, which, you don't, I would say if you're building a pretty decent sized garage that you're putting a car in, you probably want to put footers in anyways, because really, like, a concrete slab on grade really just isn't that great of a design. I mean, I'm sure it can work, like, don't get me wrong, but I would say you probably want footers for your concrete foundation. So whether that's block footers or whether that's just concrete, like my concrete was essentially a monolithic pour done in 2 parts, which is not typical, but essentially my footers were so big that they poured the footers and then put vertical rebar sticking out of them. And then they poured the floor and tied that in with the footers, essentially. So as far as like the floor is concerned for your garage, typically a lot of contractors are going to quote 4 inches. And if you're putting, like, let's just say you're not planning on putting a lift in, that's fine. If you're putting a 2-post lift in, you definitely need to make that area where that lift is going to be at least 12 inches deep of just concrete. So, you need stone underneath that, of course, as well. So keep that in mind. If you're doing a 2-post lift, where that lift is bolted to the floor, you need at least 12 inches of concrete alone. So almost essentially like a pier. So even if that goes a little bit deeper than the rest of your concrete floor. Now I'm just doing a 4-post lift, so I only really needed 6 inches. I didn't really even need 6 inches. You could do 4, but I just felt a little bit more comfortable going with 6 inches. And then I also even put rebar throughout the entire floor. The number 4, which means that's 1/2 inch diameter rebar.
So for people who might not know, like myself, I probably sound ignorant. What is rebar?
So essentially, yeah, it's essentially like a steel rod, right? Where it just serves as reinforcement throughout the slab. Now, there's different kinds of rebar. You'll see some contractors, and these are things to look out for when you're getting quotes from contractors. Like, some contractors are going to quote you, it might say rebar, but they might just be using like a thin wire mesh, which essentially is like a metal mat that they just lay out. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't work. It can work, but I opted to upgrade and go with half-inch round rebar and made sure that the contractor tied it where it overlaps, and made sure that they used rebar chairs to lift it off the ground of the stone. So let's go through the base just real quick so everyone listening knows how the foundation is built. So you compact your soil after you strip your topsoil. Then you put down stone. Now that's going to determine on that amount of stone is going to be determined on your grade and a bunch of other factors. And then on top of that, I put down a 15 millimeter moisture barrier, because moisture is always coming up from the ground. So you want to block that out of your concrete so it's not entering your building. So I used a product called Stego. That's Stego. They make a really, really thick, nice moisture barrier. And then on top of that is where they put the rebar chairs to lift the rebar into the center of the slab. Because if you just lay rebar on the moisture barrier, you don't have reinforcement in the right place. It's just laying on the ground. You essentially want that in the middle of the slab. And one thing to keep in mind with rebar is the more reinforcement you have, the more rebar, the stronger your slab is going to be. And then once all that rebar is set in place, your concrete guys can pour the concrete and essentially finish it. So that's the down and dirty on concrete.
That's great. It's a lot more. There's a lot more involved than I would have thought. So that's extremely insightful.
Yeah, I think just one other thing I forgot to mention was this goes back to planning. Like, are you putting a bathroom in your garage, right? Are you having any like pipes? Are you having wiring that comes up through the floor? Or even if you do like a floor drain, if you plan on washing cars in your garage, I would say if you do any of that, just make sure it's built right, because you don't want, I had in my old garage that was just a single car garage. I had a drain in it and it was made out of terracotta. And that's part of the reason the concrete floor failed, because the pipe collapsed. So yeah, definitely make sure it's built properly and do your research.
Yeah, that's great. So so we got the floor. So let's talk about you mentioned earlier, that's a metal structure. What else can you provide on the structure of the garage?
Yeah, so a couple of things, and I guess I know a little bit more about the metal garages now because I didn't go with a post frame. But I would say if you're going to go with a post frame, one good thing is like a lot of those builders, you can probably they're probably going to be local first off, versus like a metal building company where they're coming from wherever. But you could probably ask to go see some of their work, which I would probably recommend. So, maybe there's a really happy customer that they'll be like, oh yeah, you can go check out their garage. So at least see the quality of the work. But for a metal building, I would say a couple of things you definitely want to do is you definitely want to get the vertical roof. So that means the panels with the ribs in the panels allow the water to drain off. And then I would say you probably want to do that for the sides as well. And the reason being is where the corners meet, you really want a flat end. Now, I did the horizontal panels on the sides of my garage. So I didn't opt for the vertical side and upgrade, which in hindsight, I wish I would have, because I have an air gap now where those ribs are in the vertical in the metal panels. And it's kind of hard to picture in your head, but we'll put a picture up on social media so everyone knows what we're talking about. But yeah, there's a couple things to definitely keep in mind. And I would say the one good upgrade that I definitely did do was I got the radiant double, they call it a double bubble radiant barrier on the roof. And that helps reflect the heat off the metal roof and doesn't get so hot inside the building.
Yeah, no, that's definitely nice. You don't want to be cold, but you don't want to be too hot either.
Yeah.
So speaking of the weather, so what for like insulation are you planning on doing with your garage?
Yeah, so I'm planning on doing a closed cell spray foam. So I'm going to get a contractor to do that at some point in the near future. You definitely want someone who knows what they're doing to apply that properly. The benefits, a lot of people, the spray foam is becoming a lot more popular versus like the normal pink insulation or the foam board that you could put up. The nice thing about spray foam is it fills in a lot of air voids, and that's what really makes your house or your garage cold or hot, right? Because it's air, you want to keep the air inside the building, and the air that's outside the building, you want to keep that out. So the nice thing about like spray foam is it fills in a lot of those gaps and voids, whether that's in a metal building or a wood frame building. So we'll just touch on real quick, like open cell foam is essentially it's the cells of the foam are a lot more open. So it's going to be a lot cheaper than closed cell foam, but the benefit to closed cell foam, and the reason I'm going with that, is it also serves as a vapor barrier, because think about it, the cells are closed, right? So water can't penetrate it as easily as open cell foam. So if you do have a small little water leak, essentially it's going to act as a vapor barrier to some sense as well. So yeah, I'm going to do that. That's the plan at least. So we still have yet to do that though.
Yeah, I mean that's crucial though. Like you said, you don't want to have a garage that gets super moist when it's raining out, or or there's any type of air gaps or leaks or whatever. So that's good that you're thinking that through. I didn't know the whole open cell, closed cell thing. So that's a great tip. So you haven't run any electric out there yet, but what's your plan from an electrical perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, you could essentially run it off your house, right? I guess have a if you have a line that's already run underground, I would say it's probably a little difficult to do if you wanted to do that. I'm fortunate; I have the power lines run like within 15 feet of the building, so I actually contacted Pico, and they will run power out to the garage now. So and I'm in this process right now, so I'll have to report back with a little bit more information. But all I essentially had to do was fill out a form, and the guy's actually supposed to call me tomorrow. So from what I understand, they'll run the wire for free, and again, this can vary per your location. But in my situation, they've said they'll run the power for free, but then of course you have to purchase the meter, and then you have to get a certified electrician to hook up your box. So I'm just putting 100 amp panel in, and again, kind of talking about what we said earlier about pre-planning. Like I already know I'm going to be running a lift in there, which is probably going to run on 240. I'm going to be running a welder and a plasma cutter at some time. I'm going to have eventually garage door openers. I'm going to have lighting, and eventually I'm going to have a heating and cooling system in there. So make sure you plan for all this stuff. And when you're doing your electrical work, if you're doing that wiring yourself, that you make sure you put outlets in the right places. And I would say one thing, like definitely make sure you put outlets all over the garage, right? Like the most frustrating thing is like you don't have an outlet close by, and you have to run 100-foot extension cord, and you have to climb over stuff to plug it in. So make sure you do your pre-planning as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, I mean a lot of preparation for sure, but it's definitely well worth it in the long run. Based on what you're saying. So where are you at like right now? Like what, I know we touched on the electric still, the installation still, where are you at now? And like, when do you think the famous question, when do you think it will be done?
Is it ever done? It's just like a car, right?
And yeah, correct. Never done.
No, but I think it's one of those things, like you have to set your expectation, right? Like, and I think us car people, right? Like we have the tendency to perfect things, maybe over perfect things. So like, I think you have to set a limit to be like, okay, well, first off, is this your dream garage? Or is it just like, maybe it's not a garage that you're going to be in, you're not staying at that house for the rest of your life. So even if you're just upgrading your existing garage, these are things to think about. How much money do you want to spend on the flooring? How much money do you want to spend on installation? How much time do you want to put into all of this? I mean, you could make it a castle if you wanted to, right? For just your cars. But I think you have to set yourself a limit. So for me, I think that's the balancing act that I'm trying to fight internally right now, and say like, well, maybe I don't need to go that crazy on this particular area of the garage. But right now, I just got the concrete poured in at the end of April of 2022, and almost to the day, I think it might have been 30 days exactly, they installed the building at the end of May of 2022. So I have the building up. I am extremely grateful and happy and fortunate. This has been a long time coming and took a lot of hard work. But now it's like, okay, now that that's up, now I got to get my garage doors installed. So that's next on the list. I have to get gutters installed. So I'm getting a couple quotes on those. And then I'm going to be doing a French drain around the perimeter of the garage and making sure I get all the storm water away from the garage. Like if you're going to do all this work and you're going to build a new garage, make sure that you're taking those extra steps. And even like one other like little tip, we'll make this our Motorin moment. One thing that like a lot of people don't do even before they install their garage is they don't do anything to their concrete. So like you're supposed to wet cure your concrete, which you can use just a hose to spray it or a sprinkler, let the concrete drink in all that moisture for at least 2 weeks after you do it. And then after you get the concrete poured, and then like I even went the next step and I put a sealer, it's by Foundation Armor, on the outside of the concrete. So that way any water or oil that spills on the concrete essentially beads up and doesn't penetrate into the surface. So, if you're going to do all this, you kind of want to make sure that you're not taking too many shortcuts and you want to protect your investment, right? Just like you would put wax on your car. It's the same thing. Right. So so I getting a little off topic here, but yeah, I got to do the garage doors, the gutters, the French drain, that manage where the water from the downspouts are going, and then the spray foam, and then at some point down the road, I'm planning on getting a lift and a workbench and all that. But if I can get those 3 or 4 things done within the next few months before it starts getting cold again, I will be a very happy man for sure.
Yeah. Well, I have no doubts that you will. And I like, just from being there this past weekend, it looks beautiful. And I can't wait to see when it's all done. And I mean, literally just from listening to you today, you could be a garage expert, contractor, whatever you want to call it. So I know when the time comes, who knows when it'll be, but whenever I do my garage, I will be calling you up. So, and the brothers listening, I'd recommend it as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll start a consulting business, right?
There you go.
No, but for anyone listening to this, if you do have any questions, even if you're just planning a remodel or you want to, do something to your garage floor, I've done so much research, and I'm not by saying any means I am an expert on this stuff. It just I've kind of lived through it. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and I would be more than happy to at least point you in the right direction, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a perfect segue to be able to reach out to us as we kind of close this episode. Is you can follow us and check us out on social media. I'm sure Anthony, like you said, will be posting some pictures of your garage. So definitely be sure to check those out. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Motoring Millennials. And hey, it's summer season. We have some great merchandise available at motoringmillennials.com for you to show off at the racetrack, around your house, or in your garage, or at a car show. And definitely be sure to check those out. And stay tuned for some more great episodes we have upcoming. Like we said, we will be at the J Brothers race at Maple Grove next weekend, so we're really looking forward to that. It's we're hitting the stretch. It's unofficially summer, I think now. So it's
officially racing season.
Yeah, but it is officially racing season. That's all that matters. Exactly right. But awesome, Anthony. Thank you for giving our listeners some insight into your garage build, and we look forward to seeing what's next. And as always,
keep on motoring. Hit it.